This podcast was recorded on Gubby Gubby land and pays respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. Welcoming Emily to the podcast. How are you, Queen?
Thank you, Tanika, for having me on. I'm really happy to be actually talking about this topic. Not everyone is interested in it, so I'm so glad that you are. But I am doing amazing, to be honest. I'm currently in France and really enjoying it. How are you?
I'm really good, and I'm also so excited to have this conversation with you. It's been a long time coming, and I feel like, yeah, it's kind of going to be one of those conversations where it's either going to repel or attract, but I'm completely here
Exactly.
for it. And I'm so excited to just like get into it, allow you to empower everyone on, oh, I'm going to butcher the name, but Sidereal,
Sidereal.
Sidereal Astrology. And yeah, I just feel like you just have so much wisdom around it. So I'm super excited to get into it. Um, I would love to hear your journey in discovering this form of astrology and sort of how you became to be so passionate about it.
Absolutely. So, yes, sidereal astrology is definitely a controversial topic, which I'm going to be getting into explaining because maybe a lot of you have never even heard this word before. And it may actually, this episode altogether might trigger a bit of cognitive dissonance, especially for any astrologers out there or anyone who's interested in it, because yes, I'm really going to be breaking down the reality around astrology, or at least in the way that I've researched and I've come to see it. But I guess I'll start into how I got into it because, interestingly enough, growing up, I never thought about astrology at all, really. Obviously, in primary school, you might exchange your zodiac sign with your friendship group and, oh yeah, I'm this sign or whatever. But that's as deep as it got for me. And I never really looked too far into it. And honestly, I used to be one of those people who thought it was a bit vague, and I was like, I don't see how it could be fit into one of 12 boxes. And I just thought it was too simple. And so I never looked into it too much. So I wouldn't say that I ever was super deep into tropical astrology. And what actually got me interested in astrology altogether was when I came across sidereal astrology, which was originally just from personally, I like to research a lot into alternative theories, and I'm a bit of like an independent researcher. I don't go along with the mainstream narrative or uh, point of view very often. At least I like to fact check it myself. So I was kind of just doing this with another topic, but I just happened to come across sidereal astrology, at least someone talking about it. And when I saw, I guess, just the headline of it saying something about the astrology that you knew is not actually accurate, I was like, oh, actually, that's kind of cool. I was getting really interested into that. It was a little bit of a lure for me. Because I like just having my reality as I know it broken to pieces.
Mhm.
And then discovering like something new. So yeah, and then that was really the beginning of delving into it because I watched this video and then started researching way deeper into this topic altogether, and everything was falling into place. We like to stick to what we know sometimes. But yes, with this other, which I envision as more ancient system of astrology, this is what I really began with. And so I actually went on to study it with a particular sidereal astrological teacher in school just so I could learn it better because I did want to actually be able to read charts and to be able to look at the positions of the planets and constellations in the sky and be able to interpret that. So that was very helpful. But it honestly also just came from a lot of independent research anyway. So that is genuinely how I got into it.
That's so interesting. And I heard somewhere curiosity is like our easiest way of like absorbing information. When we're curious, we could just take in like
Hmm.
everything. And it just sounds like like you said, you were reeled in and you're just so curious and you just continued your journey in like understanding it and then studying it. That's like so cool that you've gone on your own healing journey, really, with understanding this form of astrology. Can you just explain the difference between mainstream astrology and sidereal astrology, just so that anyone listening can kind of grasp just like the common differences?
Absolutely. So I'd say there's a lot of layers to it. Practically everyone knows what zodiac signs are. They don't probably know them all, but they have a rough idea of whatever theirs is. Um, we see it advertised a lot. It might be on mugs, on necklaces, on t-shirts, just these 12 zodiac signs. People don't really know much about them, but they know that they sort of exist. And because of this lack of depth to the subject, I guess a lot of people just pass it off as pseudoscience and they don't look further into it, which I
Mhm.
totally understand because I was there too. Um, and we also do see it in newspapers. And the thing is that I feel as though this very surface, generic level of astrology was kind of put out on purpose, a bit like as a bit like a joke, a bit of a form of entertainment. So it lacks the depth that astrology actually has as a science and how complicated it actually gets when you do go into depth into reading astrology. So I feel as though the people, when I say they, the people who are behind this, I just like to refer to them as the controllers or
Mhm.
just the people at the top of the pyramid, the people that overlook and oversee all of the laws, the education curriculums, all of this, the food, the everything. So I feel they've definitely, this is like the hidden hand and they've got a hand in astrology as well.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Oh,
you look like
I just love your like take already on that of just how like if it's being given to us so freely, well, a lot of things are that are lies. And it's
Yes, yeah.
not to take away from tropical astrology, but more to open up the minds of like people listening that there is actually more to it than just that surface level, like you
Yeah,
said.
a little bit of an agenda behind it for sure. Because it's almost like the the people in power have absolutely been using astrology to a T for centuries. They have like the people at the very, very top I'm talking about.
Hmm.
Not like the presidents or the celebrities or the royal families. I'm talking about the people at the top that we don't even see in the public eye. They have been harboring ancient knowledge and keeping it hidden from the public for a very long time. This is why, they took out several books of the original Bible, translate it incorrectly. They hide knowledge and they use it to their advantage.
Mm.
That's why there's such a thing as knowledge is power, because it really, really is. Um, so they have kind of, instead of completely removing astrology altogether, they've put it out there, but in such a simplistic way that majority of people just pass it up. They don't believe it. But then there are a few people who delve into it and then they learn the mainstream tropical astrology. So this is Western astrology. There is also Eastern astrology, which is actually sidereal astrology, but the version of sidereal astrology that I go into is deeper than just the Eastern Vedic astrology, which I'll get into after. But
Yeah.
as for Western tropical astrology, which is what most of the world today studies, if they're an astrologer, if they're into this, or even just people who look at it as a hobby just to check their weekly horoscope or something like this, it's genuinely Western astrology.
Okay.
So the problem with Western and tropical astrology is that the system that it is based off is completely out of date by literally 2024 years. So it is based off the astrological points, which we can see using an astronomy program such as Stellarium, which is the one that I use. We can see that it is out of date, and that the dates that they are using to base the constellations and when the planets were in which constellations is based off 0 AD. Now, this is biblical times, so if you see the Bible in a different way to what they teach you in Christian churches and everything like this, as a little bit more of an astrotheological text, there is a lot of references to astronomy, astrotheology, and also astrology in the Bible. Even the three wise men were astrologers because they followed the stars
Wow.
to Bethlehem. So there is a lot of that, but church really, really today just forbids astrology, even though there's nothing in the Bible that says that it is quote unquote bad.
Yeah.
But um so if you are reading the Bible in that sense, then that is the only time that tropical astrology makes sense, because this is when the Bible is set in, that is exactly where the planets were positioned at that time. But what's wrong is that now the constellations have shifted because of the precession of the equinox. So the precession of the equinox is simply the shifting of the constellations. It means that as time progresses, our sky changes and evolves and moves. So it's like tropical astrology is stuck in a loop. It's like as if the sky doesn't change, even though down on the plane below, everything's changing.
Yeah.
And this is like one of the seven Hermetic principles that says, as above, so below. But it's completely disregarding that. It's severing the connection between the stars and what's happening on the plane below. So essentially, the constellations actually shift 1 degree every 72 years, which is slow, but it's been a lot of years since 0 AD, right? So there has definitely been movement of the constellations, and that's been exactly 28 degrees. So that is why you might hear some people saying, oh, your sun sign is actually wrong. And that's true because the constellations have shifted 28 degrees. So that's almost a whole sign, which is why you might hear that the sun was actually in a different constellation, usually the one before, on the internet somewhere. And there is actually legitimacy to that. So as you can see, this is already quite an issue because the whole point of astrology is to interpret the constellations and the stars and interpret the heavenly bodies. But tropical astrology doesn't do this, because if you develop a chart using this system that is completely outdated, then you can't actually fact check it with the sky above, because it's not going to be the same. This is why I use the sidereal system, which is also known as the current sky system, where if I am to develop a chart, if Saturn is in Leo at this on today, for example, if I'm making a transit chart, then I should look at the sky and Saturn should be in Leo. But it's not going to be like this. It's going to be Saturn is in Cancer if I'm developing a chart using the tropical system. But if you look in the sky and I'm like, Saturn isn't in Cancer, it's in Leo, so this doesn't make sense. So it's like, okay, you can use tropical if you want to, but where's the accuracy? And I feel as though it's just a way for them to mislead us. If there are people who are actually delving deep into looking to the stars for answers, as I believe the ancients did, because when you look into ancient architecture, you see many, many structures all around the world that were built in alignments with solar eclipses,
Yeah.
with specific stars or points in the sky. And this is just, it's undeniable because you can see this.
I mean, the sky has been the map for Earth, yeah, all through ancient times. Like you said, there's so much, from prior to there being the internet, prior there to being anything where people around the world could connect with anything more than the sky, that they were using it as a form of like direction. And I think it's
Absolutely.
really interesting you speaking into this and how you're just basing it off the actual sky and what's true now, not what was. And I think that's
Mhm.
game changing because it's accurate. It's actually creating it to be science. It's not just like, oh yeah, like I'm
Exactly.
an Aries because my birth chart says this, but like don't really relate to the things because like for me, I feel like I love astrology. I've always like loved just like all of this stuff, but
Mhm.
it's really interesting as well then finding out about these different forms because it's like, yeah, there are things in my birth chart, like my tropical astrology birth chart that I genuinely just am like, am I telling myself this makes sense because it should make sense?
Exactly. Yeah, if it doesn't
Yeah,
align.
so
Totally. And
interesting.
it goes so much deeper into what I would refer to as esoteric astrology, which
Hmm.
is where there are things that are just undeniable that shows that we are completely biologically connected to the resonance of the stars above, essentially.
Yeah.
Because one way to put it, basically 12 constellations, 12 cranial nerves in our brain, 7 planets, 7 endocrine glands in our body, and they each match up. So we've just got these kind of synchronicities that just shows a connection that we are in fact connected as beings down on this plane to the stars above. There are also ancient texts that do say that each of us, our spirit, are actually the stars above. Like that our spirit is not actually in our body, it's
Mm.
one of the stars in the sky. And we're just kind of projected down here. So, this is some old ancient stuff, but tropical astrology, mainstream astrology has just made a complete joke about it by
Mm.
putting um by putting a symbol on a mug or something like this,
Yeah. Yeah.
to
I totally
just
get you.
make it dumb down so that most people are going to overlook it or they're going to fall for the tropical system trap
Yeah.
and not look further into it.
And it
So the
allows
reason,
for it to
yeah,
be like, it really allows for it to be that, oh, that's just a like surface level thing. Like, oh yeah, you're just a this sign. Like it really does take away from the sacredness of it. And hearing you speak into just all these little things, like the little pathways we've already taken, I'm just like, mic drop. Like
that
it's
is why when I came across it, I just was so eager to learn more because I realized that this makes so much more sense. It actually interested me. It seemed more legit. And yeah, it actually started and I saw how, okay, yeah, this is actually a mathematical science. And reading a chart is extremely complicated.
yeah.
Um, this isn't actually what I would consider my main career path. It's more of like something that I do on the side, just not for fun, but like as in maybe as a service to the world because there's so few sidereal astrologers out there. I don't know.
Yeah. Can we quickly do like a little like who are you? Because you have so much to
Sure,
offer
yeah.
and we need to do that.
Okay. Yeah, this is like the alter ego version of me. Basically, I might be more well known as Cottage Remedies. So I'm actually my main career path is actually a naturopath. And then I also do holistic iridology as well. So I'm way down the rabbit hole in the health system, very similar to Tanika is. Just alternative health, more focused on connecting to nature, ancestral ways of nourishment, and using like basically the wisdom of our own body to heal. That and just remembering that our body has all the capabilities to heal. It's always healing and adapting. And so basically, again, just veering away from Western practices.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you for just introducing yourself because I'm like, everyone just needs to know who you are because you have so much more than just this. And I love that because, like you said, we are similar in that way where it's like just having like a whole, just like handful of things to like kind of together
Exactly.
and have a super holistic approach and be able to see things from all different lenses, not just like through one set of glasses, I think is like really, really cool. And I also really feel like looking into the future, I just feel like it's for a reason that like we were put here at this time on earth and like being people who have so many interests and passions, but like actually want to fulfill in understanding them properly. Because I just imagine about like being a wise woman one day and how much knowledge I'll be able to pass on to my children and my children's children.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you think of that too. It's like I don't know,
Hmm.
it skipped the society took a bit of a turn for a while. And I feel like our generation, there's a few of us that are like popping through and like, let's change this.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love connecting with people like you who are just super curious, like curious people, wants to learn, very interested in multiple topics and of course open-minded as well,
Yeah.
because like you said, like you've been following tropical astrology for quite a while and look how open-minded and curious you are. It just shows the type of, I guess, souls and spirits that are here at this current time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really grateful to know you and some other people in this field as well.
Yeah.
Um, but I
Okay.
guess back to the topic at hand. So just briefly explaining Vedic astrology, which is the other one that it's very much practiced in India.
Mhm.
The reason that I don't use this is because it still uses 30-degree constellations. So we're still talking about 12 constellations here,
Yeah.
but both tropical and Vedic astrology have basically taken the constellations in the sky and when they jot them down on a chart, they make them equal 30 degrees. But this doesn't match up with the sky again. None of the constellations in the sky are actually, and if you don't even know what constellations are, this is your zodiac signs. It's, Leo, Aries, Taurus. It's these characters that you know, these archetypes. And so they've narrowed them down to be equal. But in the sky, they're everyone is different. They take up a unique amount of space on the ecliptic, which is the path of the sun, in our sky. So, for example, Virgo is the largest constellation, I think takes up a whole 45 degrees of the ecliptic. And so instead of in tropical astrology, where each zodiac sign takes up 1 month of the year,
Mm-hmm.
in I guess you can call it true sidereal astrology. So this is a step ahead of Vedic astrology. Virgo takes up the whole of September and half of October. It takes up way more time because we're actually looking at, okay, throughout the year, which is the path of the sun, how long does it take for the sun to cross through each constellation? Now, all we're doing if we're jotting that on paper is just copying the sky. We're not trying to make up our own rules. We're not trying to chop it up and divide and make it something that it's not, because what we really want is just accuracy. We're just using pen and paper just to make sure it's easier to interpret, and so we can track what's going on in the sky. So essentially you can call what the astrology system that I use true sidereal astrology, which we've just made up a term for it, whereas not that long ago there only was true sidereal astrology. I feel as though these alterations are actually the modern part, or the one that's more new.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can't see by now, all I'm really going for is accuracy. I'm just trying to find the truth and just using my little lie detector to come across the method that I think is the most accurate. And then when I read charts for clients, I do see the difference. I see that it genuinely is more accurate. It resonates more, especially when we get into the details of the aspects, which is the relationships between the planets.
Yeah.
So it makes a huge difference. Now, on a little bit of a different topic, I like, as you can see, I'm not your typical astrologer because I didn't get on and just what's the word, like um just constantly tell you what sun sign I am. Like I haven't even mentioned it, and I don't even mention it to anybody. You won't see on my Instagram like, oh, sun, moon, rising, these signs, because when you look and read ancient astrology, you realize that you're not just one sign. Yes, you have some like major points in your chart, but realistically, you're all the signs.
Wow.
So, Tanika, I don't know what your sun sign is, but you may be sun in this, whatever, but you're also Scorpio, you're also Taurus, you're also Capricorn. You've got all of these in your chart. You know, you might have Saturn in Scorpio, and this is playing a huge part in the way that you take on responsibilities, you know, how you approach serious situations, what you're like at work. Like that is a massive part of you. Are you just going to disregard that because of your sun sign? Like this
Yeah.
is why I don't go around and be like, oh, I'm this sun sign. And actually what's crazy is that thinking yourself, so the sun sign equals zodiac sign really in modern terminology, but
Mm-hmm.
this is extremely recent, and I can trace it back to the exact man who I was probably like hired or whatever to make this popular, and his name was Alan Leo. He's from the late 1800s, early 1900s is when he passed away. And he was the one who popularized mainstream astrology by creating the quote unquote sun sign or the zodiac sign strictly for advertisement and pop culture purposes. It
Oh
was just
my
easier
God.
to make it popular. This is the exact time, and it's only since then, within like the last century or century and a half, that everyone has been referring to themselves as their sun sign or their zodiac sign. And
How
it was not, it
limiting
was,
as
yeah,
well. Like
I
so
know.
limiting. And it just sounds to me, the more you speak, like tropical astrology has been overcomplicated so that you have to do such in-depth calculations that it just doesn't
Hmm.
fucking make sense. So,
Yes.
of course, you're going to be skeptical on it, and it's just going to be passed off as, oh, it's a fraud, it's fake, it's not real, it doesn't make sense, whatever. Because
Hmm.
literally all of the sacredness has been taken away from it. It's not even honoring that each zodiac, takes up different space. It's just putting,
Yeah.
it's kind of like how, like, I'm gonna get a little woo-woo here, but it's kind of like how we've been brought up in society, right? To all just fit in the same size box. Like
Yeah, exactly.
it's just been cut into like equal pieces of a pie, and you just shut. the fuck up and you just eat your piece of pie and that's just how it is. Whereas this,
Totally.
whereas like this true, oh, I forget how to say it already.
Oh, sidereal.
Sidereal. Um, true sidereal astrology is like actually that empowering form of like, let's actually step outside the box and like look at it from a way bigger perspective and without having, yeah, I don't know, it's just really eye-opening.
Isn't it? This
Yeah.
is why actually, yeah, now you can probably see from my point of view of why I got into this.
Mm,
So and that was just especially when I came across this and I really just came across Alan Leo by having this question in my mind. I was like, I just don't see how we can be referring to ourselves as this. And even through studying astrology with a teacher, I've gone way more in depth of just uh reading books or just um intuitively interpreting charts for people and over time realizing, it's and coming across patterns of realizing actually this makes more sense and it's more accurate each time I read a chart when I read it this way. So
mhm.
I've come across things like this because, in tropical, it's very specific. It's like the sun is your ego, the moon is your emotions, and the rising sign is your first impressions. And it's just very, very specific. But when I read a chart like this, I don't get the best results. And then I've discovered it's way more accurate when I read the sun as the masculine, the moon as the feminine, and the rising as the ego. That is where I
Wow.
get the most accuracy with my clients in their readings. And that's why it's very right when we look at like the women in these like a century and a half ago, right? Of course they're gonna choose the masculine the sun sign as the main zodiac sign, right? And completely disregard the moon, the feminine.
Yeah,
So it goes back into
makes
this.
sense.
But really, when I read a chart for a male, I'm focusing more on the sun sign because they're gonna associate themselves with this energy way more than their moon, which is more repressed.
Mhm.
Because the men repress their emotions more, it doesn't shine through as easily. And then for a woman, I'm gonna be way more focusing on their moon sign. And then they don't express their unless they're a super confident, outgoing um female, they're not gonna be resonating as deeply with their sun sign as they do with their moon.
Yeah.
But then when I'm talking about personality and ego and how you come across to people, the ego is really the rising sign. This is like if you're in a social situation, how are people seeing you? How are people interacting with you? This is where you can really get to know your surface level personality.
But I
And the
also
rising,
think just
yeah.
to add to that, like that makes so much sense because it is your ego in situations where you are socializing. It is usually your ego that's leading you,
Hmm.
um, unconsciously. You're just showing up as like who you are, and that is,
Yeah.
a lot of the time your ego, like your beliefs and all the things are coming through, and that just makes so much sense. The way that you are describing all of this, I'm like, holy shit! Like again, mic drop.
Exactly. And the rising sign is very is very unique because obviously with the sun sign, uh you're born within like a month and everyone around you is the same sun sign because that's just when the sun was in a specific constellation or moon sign, it's a little bit uh shorter, only like 3 days or so. You need to be born in the same time as someone to have the same moon. But with the rising it's 2 hours, so it's even more specific, and that's why you see like twins are so different because like their rising could just be different. It's like a very short time frame that they have to be born in to have the same kind of ego
Yeah.
as well. So that's, and then also with twins it gets way deeper into no chart is the same. Like a minute makes the biggest difference because the planets are constantly aspecting themselves and each other, and which creates a completely different story when you're reading the chart.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so the rising sign is really just when you were born, if you look at an astronomy program, you go to the eastern horizon at the time of their birth, what constellation was rising at that point, and that is their rising sign, which is really just the kind of sheath or the layer or the personality that we wear for this lifetime. And so it can tell a lot about you and how you can learn about yourself in social encounters, in situations, how to use it to your advantage, what are your disadvantages in that regard. How do you come across? And then the deeper aspects of ourselves are the sun and moon. That goes deeper. So the ego being the sun does not make sense. It's not the surface level or surface layer energy.
Yeah. Whoa. This is so good. I just feel like you're explaining it so well, but it's just so eye-opening. Like a lot of people listening are going to be like, I had no idea this entire universe existed. Are you kidding me? What do you
I know.
find, what do you find you come across are probably the biggest like misconceptions around this form of astrology, if any, that you have encountered?
Hmm. Well, I don't think the community is that big
Hmm.
currently, in comparison, of course, to tropical and Vedic astrology. But from what I've seen, as soon as someone really discovers it, they usually just go for it and everything clicks in place. So I think it's a very specific type of person or being that is meant to discover this type of astrology.
Yeah.
Because I just don't really know anyone who's like rejected it necessarily.
Yeah, it's more that it's
Um,
not as like
yeah,
popular or
not as
mainstream.
known. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
so
have
it's
to kind of like it's YouTube will never recommend it to you. This is like one of those things that is top secret type of because it's genuinely like the accurate way to read astrology. And also astrology it links to biochemistry. So this is something that I want to learn more about, but I've already read plenty of books. What's his name? George W. Washington or something. I can't remember, but I've read a lot of books of him a while ago, and he was a biochemist from maybe the 1800s, and he wrote about the zodiac constellations and their connections to the 12 cell salts of our body. So
Mm,
this is kind of like how I was saying, oh, the 12 cranial nerves, but even deeper, we've got 12 essential cell salts in our body. We can't survive without them. We need them for good health. Some people us think that those are literally deficiencies in those cell salts are literally the cause of disease. And that just finding what cell salt you're deficient in and making sure that you've got enough of it or replenishing those stores will bring you back to good health. Like that is how some people see it.
yeah.
And each of those 12 salts are connected to one of the 12 constellations. And I believe that the Bible actually, in a very secretive way, talks about this a lot too.
Mm,
So this is how deep astrology goes. It is like it's in behind all esoteric studies and topics, ancient architecture. When you actually develop an astrological chart, you'll see how complicated it looks. I remember first looking at it and I was genuinely thinking, what the fuck is this? I was where do I even start? Like it was so confusing at first.
yeah.
And then you start to see it as a wheel and it all makes sense. And this goes a bit deeper, but if people are listening at this point, then hopefully they can tolerate it. But like, um, when you look at the tropical chart, so the one that I use, you can see there's Vedic chart, which looks like triangles in a square. I don't use this one. I do use the tropical layout of a chart, which is like a wheel.
Mhm.
And then each of the sections look like a slice of pizza, but my sections are different size slices of pizza because all the constellations are different sizes. Um, but when you compare, if you're looking at an as above, so below diagram, you see the ecliptic is a perfect circle. The zodiac in ancient Greek means circle of animals. So it's perfect circle, and the center point is Polaris. It's the North Star.
Mhm.
Now, this is where it gets a bit different, and I don't want to like categorize myself as a quote unquote flat earther because I wouldn't say that I am. I'm just definitely not a glober.
Mhm.
But it makes sense when you look at astrology and the diagram of this and the as above, so below, that if Earth is in fact a stationary level plane, it's directly under this circular constellation ecliptic. And the very center of the plane that we are living on is the North Pole, with Antarctica being the edge. Um, and then yeah, the North Star Polaris is directly above the North Pole on our map. And the perfect circle is the zodiac that's directly above.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to imagine, it's like two discs on top of each other, and both of them have a center that's in alignment. And
Yeah.
so those constellations are exactly circling above us and we're just living under it.
Oh my,
Um,
I'm like
and
such a
so
visual
we're
person.
stationary, but yeah, like we're stationary, but the constellations aren't. So they're moving and progressing forwards, and they kind of write the script above, and we energetically live it below through resonances. So yeah, that's why I do like that circular pizza looking
Hmm.
tropical chart, because I feel like it looks like a map of
Yeah,
our plane and the constellations above.
yeah.
So I do like that, how that works. Yeah, which is totally interesting.
The
But
way
yeah.
you just described that, and I'm just like such a visual person. I'm just like visualizing it as you were speaking, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like all of these things that just they just genuinely make sense. Well, it makes sense
Yeah.
to me. I'm just like, this is just so interesting. So would you say that you can still use sidereal astrology the same as tropical astrology in the sense that like the planets and like everything, like a lot of people turn
Yeah.
to astrology for like, understanding their soul's mission or understanding themselves
Hmm.
better, predicting things that may happen in the future. You can still
Hmm.
do all of this with
Yes, you can.
sidereal.
So you
Yeah.
can still do progressive charts to look into a certain year in your life.
Yeah.
You can definitely do like all the same. You can even find your big three, which is the sun, moon, and rising, and go and tell all your friends and families about it. Like
Yeah.
it's still the same. It's really just the calculations and the system that you develop the chart based off that matters.
Wow. This is so cool. I feel like I'm gonna have to get you to do my chart now because I'm just so interested in like what would come through basing it off accurate calculations rather than
Hmm.
just like a mainstream. Like I said, I do relate to astrology, but there are things that I find I'm like, I think I'm just doing the whole like, yeah, that makes sense for me because like I just like people pleasing myself, I guess, and like it should make sense for me.
Mm, of
Um,
course.
so interesting. I would
Thank you.
love to ask what like sort of advice would you have for someone who's potentially been a like in depth, like loves tropical astrology, but is starting like
Hmm.
listen to this and they're like, holy shit, I kind of think I want to like dip my toes in here. Um,
Hmm. Or like, where do they start to learn
yeah,
more?
yeah, like where would they start?
Okay. So yeah, the resources are very minimal.
Hmm.
Um, I do talk about it a lot on my own channels. So I go by She Reads the Stars
Hmm.
for this. I do have a Patreon and a YouTube channel that I post previews of my videos on. Otherwise, on the internet, if you search true sidereal astrology or sidereal astrology and you shift through all the stuff at the beginning that YouTube tries to feed you, you will come across some videos of explanations of it. If you already have background knowledge of astrology, there's not really too much else to learn. It's just new calculations. So the
Yeah.
program that I use for my chart to develop them is called Prometheus. You do have to buy it. Um, but yeah, this is from Athen Chimenti. He's also goes by what's he called? Mastering the Zodiac. So you can search him up on Google and down and buy his program, and then this is going to develop the same charts that I use,
Hmm.
which is really the only difference, because the way that you interpret it will change as soon as you change the system of the chart, because
Yeah.
now you've got a whole new story to read, like a whole new story. All the
Yeah.
points will be different and changed. And so, but yeah, if you already know about astrology and how to interpret charts and everything, then the most part's already done, to be honest.
Amazing. I have like a bit of a question that I'm just going to ask it and hopefully it makes sense. But like,
Hmm.
do you believe that we have been like put on this earth with like free will and we can just achieve and do whatever it is that we desire? Or do you like believe that it's written in the stars and like we, no matter what, are going to always like follow that
Mm.
path or be pushed towards that path of the stars? Does that make sense? Did I like sort
Oh
of?
yeah, it does, because
Yeah, yeah,
I've done a
cool.
video on this actually on my
Oh my
Patreon.
God, have you?
Yeah, but you might not like the answer of what my opinion is.
Mhm.
Um, So this goes down like a whole different rabbit hole because obviously when we look at like because I'm questioning why is astrology so accurate? How come a stranger can book an appointment with me and I can tell them about themselves, tell them about their relationship with their father and things like this, and
Yeah.
it's more or less very accurate. Oh, and how should that be? How can I just whip out a piece of paper that's mapping the sky on the moment of your birth and know all these things about you without actually knowing you?
Yeah.
And so that definitely is like obviously you're going to be questioning how much free will do we really have?
Mm.
Now, I don't use astrology to the point I don't let it define my life. I
Mhm.
actually one of the big reasons that I don't publicly talk about my chart or go off speaking about my big three signs is because I actually try to distance myself from it. I
Yeah.
think that it when we are born here, we're almost imprinted with this map. And yes, it is the script of our life,
Mhm.
but through knowing thyself, because there is an ancient scripture called, O man, know thyself, for within is hidden the treasures of treasures.
Mhm.
And this is a very key to note because all the ancients talked about knowing yourself. And I feel like astrology is a huge tool that we can use to know ourselves without taking 1,000 years of trial and error to discover. And because we're constantly learning about ourselves, but I feel like astrology is a little bit of a cheat code to it. Um, and so then from knowing yourself, you want to a little bit distance yourself from your programs. So I have come to the understanding that the zodiac and astrology is a program
Mhm.
and part of the matrix code. So I'm not even going to get into whether it's like good or bad. No, it's not like evil or demonic like the church tries to say. But I think it gets deep into like this realm as a whole that we're currently living in. But
Yeah.
yeah, in regards to free will, we have it. But if you're an unconscious player, you're going to be living by your script. So it's all about becoming a conscious player in this realm.
Mm.
And this is like the first step is finally admitting that, okay, yes, we do kind of have these planets above us that are more or less writing a code for our reality, and they wrote one at the moment of our birth. When I guess our soul is kind of scanned like a barcode, our past lives are known, why we're here is known, things like this. And so we're born and we are our true selves, but it also does imprint things like traumas and stuff like this because really we're here as loosh and like a little bit of a soul farm type of situation. And part of it is to go through traumas and hardships and challenges. And if we could really create our own reality with ultimate free will, Tanika, I don't think you would have gone through some of the experiences that you've gone through in your life. I
Mm.
don't think I would have either. If we could
Yeah.
really, I know that we get to quote unquote learn from it, but that's new age belief systems.
Yeah.
Because if we really were or are our true selves without any limitations or restrictions, we are like we couldn't even fit in these bodies in these skin
Yeah.
suits. Like we are like vast advanced beings that have been alive forever because there was no beginning and there is no end. We are constant. We are like all knowing. We're fractures of God and all of this, right? So we don't really have this to like learn. The new age belief is that Earth is a school and we come here to go through all these lessons, but it's like, then how come we're born with a mind wipe? Like, why do we go through amnesia, come back again? How many times do you have to touch a stove to know that it's hot? But the thing is, how am I going to learn not to touch that stove again if I can't remember in my past life
Yeah.
that I burnt myself, And why do we have
You
to go through
have
past
just
life
like
regressions to discover it?
you have just opened up my mind even more. And that when you said the part around you
You
can
got to be a
just
conscious player or
you've got to be
something.
a conscious player, but if you are unconscious, you're just following the script. I'm like,
Yeah, exactly.
do
That's
you
what it
know,
really is.
so
Like,
many people I think feel so limited by their birth chart because they think in my
mhm.
birth chart it says that I'm, bad with relationships, so I'm never going to find love. And that's just what they're told and that's just what they believe.
Yeah.
But the way that you're describing it is, yeah, that might be there, but are you
Hmm.
going to then just be unconscious about that and just let that be it? Or are
Exactly.
you going to like
So
actually
yeah,
be conscious and like have that free will over your chart and actually like sort of shift that? I'm just, my,
exactly. It's remembering that you have the power. So I think that we are in a little bit of a malevolent uh rulership. You know, there's even the Bible says that we're in Satan's world, like,
yeah.
and it's kind of obvious today. Um, so energetically speaking, um, yeah, the yogis would say that life is a dream, and then what I would say is that some people are sleepwalking and some people are lucid, and so it's just deciding like who are you? Are you in control of your life, or are you not aware of anything and you just let everything happen to you and go ahead in this way? You may think that you're controlling your life by choosing the job they want to choose, but how do you know that's actually what you want or if that's your programs wanting that? So I try to read charts in a very practical manner by reading it in a way of helping you break free from your zodiac
Yeah.
by learning how to master it essentially and write your own script and not be limited by these things. And it's the thing is that obviously it's extremely difficult.
Hmm.
It's very difficult.
Yeah. I mean, if it was
Because
easy, everyone
yeah,
would be doing it, right? If it was
yeah,
easy, it would be
exactly.
like the world wouldn't be faced with a lot of the things because people would be awake and things wouldn't have to get to the point that they get to of, war and all the things because
Mm-hmm.
people would be conscious in knowing
Totally.
that, yeah, oh my gosh, my
Yeah.
mind is going in
And
so many
even
directions as you're speaking.
yeah.
I'm adoring this conversation. I just feel like so insightful. I'm going to have to listen back to it after because I just feel like you're dropping so many codes of just like, oh my fucking God. Like,
That's what I said at the beginning. I was like, this is probably gonna cause some cognitive dissonance. You might learn a lot in this hour or so.
yeah.
But yeah, this is the other side to me that is just very curious and loves to learn and loves this is what I was not making an understatement when I said that I like to dive down the rabbit hole at all.
But I just feel like that's you being conscious, right? And like you
Yeah, that's what
actually
I try to do.
going,
Yeah.
yeah, like you can either, play victim to the, oh, I've been put in on the earth at this time frame and
Hmm.
there's all these things going wrong and I don't have the opportunity here or like whatever, you can play into that, or you can just be like, I'm gonna up level and elevate myself as much as
Hmm.
possible to really like just be full of wisdom. Like you said, knowledge is power, and
Yeah.
it truly is.
And you can see how it is because like in this regard, the more knowledge you have, the more control that you have.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh my gosh. I would love to ask you, is there anything else that you would love to cover before we wrap up this episode?
I mean, I think that was pretty thorough.
Yeah.
I hope that uh everyone listening enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Or
Oh
I
my
might
God.
just have to go and stand at their window for a little while.
This was so good. Like, I am so glad I asked you to come on the podcast because I just love, like, I love all of this stuff. I love just finding new things that are just not as maybe accepted in society and just
Yeah.
discovering them. I feel like if, I mean, even the work I do, right, with like menstrual cycles
Hmm.
and connecting women to their cycle, like that's classed as weird to some people. And it's just
Yeah,
like,
it's not common yet. And the same with this field as well. Yeah.
yeah, but I feel like moving forward, I mean, people have different opinions about this, but I personally am optimistic and I feel like moving forward, even by the time our children are grown up, it's going to be a different world where this is more the mainstream.
Hmm. Yeah, I
And
think
I
so.
truly believe that, like I do. And I know there's a lot of people that think like, oh, there's no way, but things are breaking down and shifting and changing. And I'm optimistic that this is the new way of things moving forward.
Yeah, and astrology shows this once again because when you look at the sky, it shows that we are moving out of Pisces, and we're moving into the Aquarian age.
Mm,
And the Aquarian age is ruled by Saturn. So this is a very like high chakra, wisdom. We're going to be way more open-minded. This is more third eye awareness type of thing. So it's almost like all the truth will come to the light.
mm,
There will be no deception anymore because Piscean age is the age of deception, illusion, being deep in the abyss, in the waters.
Mm.
blind faith. Like this is the age that we're coming out of, and very religion focused. This is very Piscean age. So we can see that we are moving out of this,
Yeah.
and that yeah, we are. So without a doubt, things are changing. And this once again just shows how much of a script that we are living under for sure.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, totally. I am already just like, I already have like questions, but I'm like, I'll get you on again because I feel like this was totally enough for people like to dip their toe in to understand this and to get to know you. But I'm already like, I'm going to get you back on the podcast soon because you have so much wisdom to give. And I think it's just like you're literally 20 years old. It blows my mind. I feel like, I mean, I know I'm young too, and like I started my like journey young as well, but I don't know. I just feel like
Mhm.
how fucking cool. Like so many people just like go their whole life and they're just like don't even know what they truly like or love themselves. And
Yeah.
it's like, this is what I mean by I just feel like the world is changing and I'm so grateful we
Mhm.
cross paths.
Yeah, me too.
Um,
Absolutely.
where can everyone find you? Instagram, website. I think you mentioned it already, but just again, and I'll leave it linked below
Yeah,
just because
absolutely.
I'm sure people are going to want their chart read. Like I know I do.
So, okay, so for everything that I've just been talking about, this is where I go by She Reads the Stars.
Mhm.
So you can find me on Instagram at that username, also on YouTube. Where I do the most videos, where I speak like this, I do educational videos, is on Patreon. Same
Mhm.
name, She Reads the Stars. And then I do have a website that you can book a reading with me. So it's got all my different readings available on there. And th that one, it's I haven't got a private domain for it because, like I said, it's more on the side. So I'll get you to link it, but it is She Reads the Stars dot square dot store or something.
Yep.
Um, and then yeah, on the other side, I do go by Cottage Remedies, so this is more known for sure. And so I'm Cottage Remedies on YouTube, Instagram, and my website is cottageremedies.com.
Beautiful. I'll
All for
leave
health stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll leave all the things linked below. And yeah, like I said, I'll get you on again because you've got like the whole health aspect to things and just like the way that you move through life. So, like
Mhm.
a lot of people would say would be very alternative, although I just am like, I love seeing your things. But then, yeah, I feel like I'll be having you back on and we'll have all those conversations. But thank you
Yeah, I'd
so
love
much
to.
again. I appreciate you so much. And I'm just so
Oh, thanks,
excited for
Tanika.
everyone to listen to this.
Thank you. I really enjoyed coming on and speaking, and I'd love to come back. Thank you.
Amazing. Okay, bye everyone.